All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go with the Flow. I'm your host, Folarin Okulaja, here with another special guest and another episode that came about in the most random way. And these are actually my favorite episodes. But we have Cole Rodby on the show. Welcome to the show, Cole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
But quick, yeah, literally the way this came about, I was at a Friendsgiving dinner 2 weekends ago, I believe it was. And then the friend, he was like, "Oh, what are you doing after this?" I said, "I didn't have any plans." He said, "Oh, I have this birthday party that I'm going to go to. I think it's fine if you guys come as plus ones." He literally brought like 4 people. We were all the plus ones.
Welcome in.
But walk in, and it was Cole's joint birthday party that I was happen to crash. We ended up chatting for a little because I didn't even know it was your birthday party. I think I walked up to you and I was like, "Oh, how do you know this person?" You're like, "Oh, I live here. It's my birthday." I was like, "Happy birthday."
It's always a good way to meet someone. Like, there was a few times that happened where they're like, "Oh, like, what's your name?" I'm like, "Oh, it's my birthday."
Yeah, it's
always good.
my. And then you mentioned you have a clothing brand. And I was like, one, I love anybody doing something creative. When with this podcast, I love just telling people stories and kind of like the entrepreneurship grind. And so I asked you to come on the podcast, and a week and a half, 2 weeks later, now we're here.
Let's do it.
But could you start by just telling the people about yourself? Who are you?
I'm Cole Rodby. I'm born and raised in Chicago, so love Chicago. I moved to New York about 14 months ago. So, I grew up in the city of Chicago, which was its own unique experience on its own. It's part of why I ride for Chicago. Love it to death. Do probably see myself going back there one day. But because I'm from the city and right after college, I moved back to the city and was there for a few years. And just kind of like, again, as much as Chicago is a big city, it still is a hometown. Everyone's got to get out of their hometown.
This is true.
So that's kind of how I ended up here. That's how I ended up in New York. But growing up in Chicago, same house my whole life, kind of on the north side. Went to public high school. Was had a great experience there. Really like grew a lot like throughout my time in Chicago. You're just exposed. Being from the city, like I really like appreciate that because there's just different experiences you run into that you wouldn't necessarily always get. And then went to Wisconsin for college. Work full time in marketing, and then started the brand. So that's
Beautiful. Nice
story.
comprehensive update.
Yeah.
But okay, to touch on two things you just mentioned.
Yes.
First, high school. When I was doing my extensive research for this episode, I saw you went to Whitney Young High School.
Yep.
And that name popped out to me because I'm a Duke basketball fan.
Yep.
And the one and only Jahlil Okafor went there. Shout out to him. He got us a national championship in 2015. And you mentioned that you played basketball. Well, not with him, but you were on the team.
I was on the team. So I was on JV when he was on varsity. No, Whitney Young basketball, that was one of the experiences that was just like invaluable for me. Being part of one, like a program of that level, but also just most of the people on the team were extremely different from me, extremely different backgrounds. And that was like my experience with Whitney Young in general. So growing up through 8th grade, I went to a private school, which was great. I had nothing bad to say about it, but it is like primarily white, like primarily similar people. And Whitney Young is a magnet school that it's a public school, but you have to test into it.
Mhm.
And I really credit that going to Whitney Young specifically is maybe the most important like thing for my life and
Wow.
like who I am today. Because it's so formative when you're young, and to go to like a school that like embraces diversity, meeting different people, at that point in your life, I just think was invaluable for me. There's a lot of people like Whitney Young is a school that people rep very hard if you meet people from Whitney Young. And I think it's because it's like a unique experience in that just all the different types of people, it's a melting pot. So I really did love it there. And then the basketball aspect. So I'm good at basketball, but I'm good on a normal person level.
Yeah.
You put me in a pickup game with random people, I'm good. But like Whitney Young is legit. It is a like
National,
there goes D1.
nationally recognized program. Yep.
So I played, freshman JV. I was pretty good. I was a starter.
Okay.
But varsity, I knew this was coming. But varsity, I was a little bit of a bench rider, which was a frustrating thing in of itself because basketball was kind of my identity growing up and being good at basketball. And then you go and at a less competitive school, I probably would have been one of the better players starting. And then at Whitney Young, you just ride the bench. But again, like being part of that kind of program And that experience was, again, like in the long run, invaluable. And yes, Jaleel was on the team. So he was on. So I was a freshman sophomore, but like JV practices with varsity.
Okay.
So I did know him. He was a little scary.
I mean,
He was a nice guy. But
what is he? He's like 6'11". He's
6'11". They were also like Whitney Young's always good at basketball, but that team when he went there was like I think second in the country.
because he was one of the best players in the country. I
Yeah.
think he was a top 5 recruit coming out of high
And
school.
I was
Yeah.
friends with some of them, but like I wasn't really friends with him. But my funny Jaleel story is I really wanted to go to Duke. I visited Duke. And you know, in the end, I think it was a little bit like, all right, Cole, like, I don't know if you're getting into Duke. But in retrospect, like looking back, I had good credentials, but like Duke credentials are like, you know, like it's very hard to get into. So like I thought that to maybe give me a leg up, I had Jaleel Kapoor write me a letter of rec. to Duke. Like no bullshit. Jaleel Kapoor wrote me a letter of rec to Duke. Thank you, Jaleel. Appreciate it.
I was about to say that is really nice of him.
No, he's a very nice guy, and like that was very nice of him to do. I remember going into being like, I have no idea. Like he just won the national championship the year before.
Yeah.
So I had no idea if either like that would hold a lot of weight because he just won the national championship, or if it would hold zero weight because he's like a 19-year-old kid. Either way, like looking back, like I wasn't. I think maybe if I was on the edge, it would have helped, but like I don't think I was.
Honestly,
my funny
I respect the attempt because, especially coming off a national championship, I feel like the clout that he had might have been able to hold some weight.
It was something that might have worked, and I felt like in that moment I needed it to get into Duke, but you know, in the end,
You went to Wisconsin.
Yes.
Why did you decide on Wisconsin?
So it's funny, actually, that national championship was Wisconsin Duke.
It was.
So
Indeed.
I knew I was going to Wisconsin, but at that point you hadn't gone there yet. You don't really hold like the, you know, the pride
There's no
of, like, I'm not
association.
a fan yet, and like Jaleel is my guy, so I did vote for Duke in that national championship. That was a good game. So Wisconsin was interesting. So like for me, I very much got caught up in going to like, and my school is very much like this, like, you know, going to the best possible academic school you can go to, which I think is great. And you know, so I was very like I applied to like Vanderbilt, Penn, all like some Ivy Leagues, and I had good credentials. ACT score was hitting.
Okay.
GPA wasn't crazy, and my school is very competitive. So like it's a magnet school. So like there's a lot of people trying to go to these high achieving schools, and like I was good but not great in terms of my credentials. So I didn't get into any of them, which was kind of my first like, you know, that's where I thought I would go. And then, you know, I got into Wisconsin and I didn't know much about it because Wisconsin is not a big, you think it would be because it's Midwest, but from my particular high school, not that many people go to Wisconsin. I think it's because Wisconsin's extremely white and my whole school is like, and one of the reasons I love about it, it's like diversity.
Mhm.
And that was how I felt too. I was kind of like, I don't know, like Wisconsin, but it was the best school I got into. And then I started talking to people about Wisconsin, like in the Midwest, and people just had really good things to say about it.
It's a good school, yeah.
And I visited and had a good time. And so it is one of those schools that's hard not to like. People are nice. There's a lot of partying, but also like people do care about their lives, care about school. You know, it's decently close to home, which I didn't know I needed at the time, but I think that was really helpful for me. Like I definitely had like when I talk about college for me, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, like I don't look at it with super rosy glasses because I was going through a lot in college. Like I'm a lot happier as an adult and I was a lot happier in high school. I think in college, it's just like you're an adult now, but I didn't really have the tools to be an adult. I didn't really have the work ethic I have now, the discipline I have now. And like, if you look at a lot of it in life, like your habits, your work ethic, you know, how you live your day to day life, regardless of who you are as a person, like that is kind of life, right? And I don't think I really had those stuff locked down yet. And I'm someone who holds myself, like I'm very hard on myself internally. So college was interesting. I mean, I loved it has nothing to do with Wisconsin. Wisconsin was great, but you know, I think that was a time of if I go through a rough patch, it would probably be college. Like trying to you know, again, like wanting a lot for yourself, but I don't think I woke up and was the person. I want to be. That doesn't mean I wasn't nice. I was nice to people. I had a good social life, but I wasn't that disciplined of a student. Um, and I just like, it just took me a while to kind of, find my place. My whole family's very hardworking, and I think that's where kind of the pressure comes. And when you kind of have like hard work to me is important, and when you have that as one of your base values and you're not living it, like in
Mhm.
retrospect, it's I see why I was unhappy during those years at times. Like I had a good time too. Like, and it wasn't like every day but like looking back, I see why I was a little bit, struggling then because I kind of wasn't living like the stuff that I find actually important. But I think it's also being young and we got there
So
eventually.
then where did that you mentioned you didn't have the motivations in college to kind of get to the levels that you wanted to. When did that eventually kind of switch for you and you develop
I
those
think
those habits?
I think it took about 2 years after college and a slow steady up like after college. So like I think it's just cultivating the skills of like getting used to doing things you don't want to do. Where it's like there's a lot of stuff, and I know we're gonna get into the brand, but like the the designing stuff, the throwing events is very cool, but there's just all this stuff, carrying boxes, um, finance stuff, and whether it's your job too, like that I have that I like, but like life comes down to getting used to doing things you don't want to do to get places you want to be. And if you don't cultivate that skill, like that's a skill in of itself, and that's something I think took me, and I'm not perfect at all now, but like I think I'm pretty good at it now and like working hard. And I think those kind of skills, like I don't know, it could be impulse control, like not indulging in bad habits. Um, and I always say, like, I still have a bunch of habits that I really want to work on, but I think it's stacking habits. Like, it was a slow process of like, working hard at your job and then like also throwing in the brand and then also, starting to eat healthier and then starting to work. And it's just kind of stacking them.
It's funny that you just mentioned what you said about having to do things that you don't want to do. Because one, I with the podcast, it's exactly the same way. I don't want to sit and I don't want to make the clips. I
Yes.
don't want to, have to worry about booking all these guests. I was just telling you how there was a point in college when because I had 4 students working on the podcast for me, I just got to prep, show up, record,
Right.
and that was all I had to do. But I don't want to go post on Instagram, do all these other things, but it's all necessary to kind of feed the machine and
Yes.
try to get
100%.
this to the point you want to go to. And then also what you just said, there was a Nick Saban speech that he gave. He actually did it at work like a month ago,
Mm.
and he said exactly what you just said, how we make hundreds of decisions a day and they all come down to two things. How do I get myself to do this thing that I don't want to do that I know I should do?
Yeah.
And how do I keep myself from doing the thing that I shouldn't do but I do want to do?
Yes.
And that is literally all it boils down to. It's hard but it's simple at the
Yes.
same time. So it's funny that you mentioned
I
that.
think I
But
saw that clip. Yeah.
okay, and so you just mentioned the brand. Talk to me about the brand.
Yes. Okay. So it's called Damaged Goods Clothing. It is a streetwear brand. Um, Kind of the core idea of the brand is that we are all damaged in some shape or form, which is something I truly believe. Like, it kind of came out of again that period of college and right after college when I did have a lot like kind of worse, I think mental health stuff than I have now, and kind of appreciating that other people and like just realizing that every person is going through things. Every person has insecurities, every person has anxieties. Um, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So, kind of our two taglines are we are all damaged goods, which is, I don't know if you can see this, but this is,
Show it to the camera. There you go. They
there we
can see it. Beautiful. Yep.
go. And, that basically means our shared experience of being damaged and then find beauty in the damage. See, I'm repping all
Love
the
it, as you
sayings
should be.
and finding beauty in the fact that, we have that shared experience. And so kind of how that is shown in the brand is either like through the designs often showcase unlikely subjects or damaged subjects. If you see here on this design, she's a beautiful woman, but she has kind of cracks. And a lot of our designs kind of either have more overt or like less obvious ways of showing damage, and our photo shoots as well. So like in the way I view it is if you can have kind of unlikely or damaged subjects on clothing that people want to wear and find beautiful. And then also our photo shoots, whether we use broken mirrors or we went to an abandoned church once. It's not like airbrush models. Um, and you know, though I believe some of those photos are beautiful. So I think just the brand is ethos is kind of given in that way where it's like, you're making something really cool and something people want to engage with, but it's all on the basis of damage and being broken and being imperfect. And then kind of on that vein, for every purchase, we give $5 to mental health charity, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Just because, like again, it is something that wants to appreciate people's mental health. So that charity specifically, helps people get mental health services who need it, who can't, always afford it. So, you kind of, wanted to put my money where my mouth was a little bit with
Which
that.
I love every part of that. And we'll
Yeah.
get to the mental health portion of it with the foundation a
Yeah.
little bit later. But one of the first things that you mentioned, that was even the inspiration for the ethos behind it, is the fact that we are all going through things. We are all imperfect. We are all kind of have these things that we struggle with, but you can't necessarily tell from the outside looking in
Yeah.
at people, because I've spoken about this a ton on here, and there was 2 episodes ago we really focused on mental health, and I think a big portion of it is social media. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the thing we all talk about all the time, where you look on Instagram and you see the perfect version of everybody's lives because it's just a curated highlight reel,
Yeah.
but no one is actually posting the moments when they might be a little bit sad, or they might, be going through all these more serious things. Do you feel like social media played a part in your own sort of journey with mental health and trying to just comes that realization that we're all damaged and that's it's okay to be that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it and you described it perfectly. I think the world we live in, particularly Instagram, is it's everyone's best self being put out as people talk about. I think another example is your close friends you're with all the time. I live with like 2 of my best friends. Like you see them in their highs, their lows. You see them hungover. You see them when they don't look good. You see them when they're tired. You see them when they're in a bad mood. Like people that outside of the people that see me on a day-to-day basis, 90% of other people are seeing me on the weekend where like my hair is done, like I'm wearing my best fit, like I make sure I don't go, like I'm generally in a good mood or I'm talkative. And then also, or they'll see my Instagram, which again is like, I'm guilty of it too. Like it's a portrayal of my best self, which is how it goes.
That's how we all do it.
And
Yep.
that's again, that's not me either. And that's not anyone. Like you see, me, I have bad days. I have days where I just don't feel like getting out of bed. I have days where it's really hard for me to, um, you know, do the things I need to do, get to the gym, work out. There's times where I'm like, I can get really quiet. I'm like, generally, people know me as very, very talkative. I don't know if you could tell on the podcast. I am. I better be talkative on a podcast, but I can also be, extremely quiet. And I think it's just, it's social media, but it's also just, people only get a glimpse of you. And a lot of times people who don't really see you on a daily basis, you put the best thing forward, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think when you open up to people, in a certain moment, or you really get to know someone or talk to someone, you see, what every single person's got. I don't know a single person that doesn't have, it's crazy. Everyone is insecure. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's
Oh my
I
god.
think it's a
Yeah.
little bit impossible to be not be, but you see people who like it's almost like all it is. If you're like only a little bit insecure, that's like you're almost like super like every person I talk to, whether they're beautiful, whether they're super successful, like, I think I'm like pretty good at reading people. And I think it's one of the reasons I'm good at reading people is because I have my own insecurities. So I like, you'll see, certain people say things a certain way, or hide something about themselves, and you just realize that the more and more you talk to people, go out in the world, you get older. I'm 27 now. Like every single person is insecure. Drake is insecure.
That we could
That's a
we
bad
could
example.
yeah, that's a bad, we could definitely tell.
Yeah,
That
we
one's
know that.
it's out there
Yeah.
for the world to see.
Kendrick Lamar is insecure, like in ways probably like
It's just part of being a human being.
it's part of being a human, and I really do think that is beautiful. And like I'm a lot less. I deal with it. I've gotten a handle on it a lot more than I did, let's say 3-4 years ago. But back in those days when I started the brand, like that feeling made me feel better.
Yeah.
The fact that everyone has that. Like that made me feel better about it. So I think that's kind of where it
And again, to expand on two things that you just said on there are very, very relatable. One, you being someone who's outside and everyone always sees you as very talkative, and they
yeah,
kind of assume that you're always that way. I'm very, very similar when, again, and it makes sense that this would be the case, but when you're outside, you want to be social. You want to be
yeah,
talking to people. You're in a good mood and you're just kind of in that zone where that's what you want to do. But I'm the exact same way where there's certain, I love that you brought up the roommates because my roommates are the ones who are going to attest to this more than anybody else. There's days when I don't want to say shit to anybody.
right.
I go home, especially it's usually post work, but even sometimes on the weekends, and I just want to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk to them
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
And it's not anything to do with them. It's just me being like, I need my moment. I need my peace. I want my headphones in. I want to disappear to my room and just chill out.
Yeah.
And everybody is this way, but we never really take a second to appreciate that. Where just because when we're at a birthday party, of course, that's when we're all in our
Right.
most social form and our most social being essentially, but there's plenty of times when again this person that you have this idea of who they actually are is actually just completely different. And I would actually, because that's when people always tell me that I'm extrovert and I'm like, I'm extrovert, you think I'm extroverted because you see me out and obviously
Right.
I want to talk, but there's probably 50% of the time if not more where it's like I just want to sit at home and
Yeah.
do absolutely nothing and talk to nobody
Right.
and watch Game of Thrones
Yeah, yeah.
all day
Yeah, yeah.
all day every day. So that is something that I've also been able to appreciate.
Right.
Okay, and then with the brand,
Yep.
tell me, go into a little bit more about, this is an idea you have from idea to execution and implementation.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about that journey
Yeah,
because it's a lot, lot harder than
way
people.
I thought of the brand is actually it's really funny. So like one of my like I don't know if issue is the right word, but things I'd like to work on, an ongoing struggle for me is sleep. Like I just
You should get an Oura ring. Do you have an Oura ring? Shout out
no.
Oura ring. They should sponsor the podcast.
Okay.
But
Hey, or
Oura
get
ring,
on it.
great for tracking your
Um,
sleep. But
But yeah, so I just have it's not really staying asleep, but I've had trouble in my life really since I was a kid of falling asleep and sleep habits. And so for whatever reason, like when I try to go to sleep a lot of times, like everything that I don't want to think about is what comes up. So whether it's relationships, job, like whatever, the whole gamut. It's unfortunate that this happens, but I know y'all out there can relate a little bit. So one of the ways I combat that is I fantasize about things that aren't real. And for whatever reason, I think that just helps me sleep because real life is stressful and matters. And these like little fantasies I think about are not real. So a few of them I had when I was younger, I used to fantasize about being in the NBA. And I would think about like, what would my training schedule be? Where would I live? Like, what would I do in the off season? Like, what girls would I DM?
oh wow, you went
We
in
go,
depth.
no,
You went in depth
because it's night by night. Like, and
what girls would you DM? No, I'm kidding.
yeah,
I'm
we got
joking.
a
I'm
list.
joking.
We save that for
Yeah.
part two of the podcast. Follow the Patreon. No, but and then that kind of fell off because I wasn't quite as into basketball as I was when I was younger. So then, like the number one thing, if I could choose anything to be in the world, and I don't like would be famous in music, or like not even famous. That's the wrong way to make incredible music. I think music is the coolest thing in the world. I have no musical talent at all, so it is a real fantasy. Um, and as you go night by night, you kind of you have to go keep going with this fantasy because you already thought about where you're gonna live and what house you'll have. So then the next night you think about like what kind of music you made, what artists you collab with. And then the other thing, like one night I was like, oh, if I was famous in music, I'd also have a clothing brand. And then the next night, it's what would my clothing brand be? And you start to like think that out. And literally through that, I just thought of the name Damaged Goods and then the core idea behind it, which is just so random that that's how I thought of it. And then once I thought of the idea, I think my first job I wasn't super fulfilled in, which I think is common on a first job. You're not like doing super important stuff.
Yeah.
For context, I work in advertising at an agency full time, and I like my job now. But my first job didn't feel super fulfilled, and I don't work in the creative side of advertising. I work in more like the strategy and analytics side. And you know, again, it was kind of more of an escape to think about this idea, like even not even in like the trying to sleep lens, but just like throughout my life, I started thinking about it, started thinking about designs and sketching some out. Um, and then from there, like, I think one of my better qualities is even when I feel like scared or insecure, I am good at like making the jump and putting myself out there. So that wasn't really a consideration for me. It was more just like, this is something cool. I thought of three cool designs. I came out with three. pieces to start. I found a girl that also went to Wisconsin was a talented graphic designer, and we just made them. And then I think from that point, I just fell in love with it. So it was kind of like it wasn't some master plan. I mean, maybe it should be a little bit more of a now like I should make a business plan, but it wasn't really some master plan. It came from an idea that I thought was cool. I made 3 pieces and I enjoyed that process. And then now it's 3.5 years later, and it's kind of to this day is kind of like why not thing for me is really how I view it. Like a why not. Like I think I appreciate anyone who does stuff like this. Like you work full time, like that's a grind. Like and then this podcast, like yes, it's additional work, but it's also like why not?
Yeah.
And I think for this brand, like, and we could talk about like kind of where I'm at with it right now, but in some capacity, I plan to do this for years and years and years. Like, I don't like I would really like the end goal is for it to make it
Yeah.
and be a real successful brand, be my full-time job. But regardless of that, like in whatever capacity I can do it, like I think I will always do this because I've now like creating something and creating the clothes. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
A couple of things that you mentioned again, because I love the direction this conversation is going.
Yeah.
First thing, you saying that you are not scared to put things out there and put yourself out there. I think that's a blessing because that is not the case for most people.
Yeah.
And I truly believe there are, I don't know what percentage you want to put on it, 50% of people out there in the world who have some sort of creative outlet, whether it's they want to do podcasting, whether it's they want to do YouTube videos, whether they want to do music or clothing, but they're just so scared of what people are going to say. Even for myself, I wouldn't say it was more of actually, no, it was definitely a fear. It was definitely a fear of, okay, hi, I'm not usually, I think I'm pretty private about a lot of stuff. Obviously, I come on here and I speak about a lot of things, but I'm actually quite private about a lot of different things. And so it was that, okay, I'm someone who, this is the way I exist in the world. Putting this podcast out will open me up to a lot of other opinions, criticisms, praise, whatever it is that I don't think I was ready for. And so there was that fear. But then eventually, another thing that you said that I fucking love is you just said, why not? Because, and there's an episode of this podcast where my friend who was my first episode on the podcast, he was the one who asked me to do it, or the one who inspired me to do it, because we'd been sitting in our dorm room one day talking about all the things that I wanted to do. I mentioned the podcast, and he asked me a very simple question of what's stopping you?
Yeah.
And I thought through, I tried to come up with all these excuses, and then I eventually realized, like, there is nothing stopping me, so why not just go ahead and do it?
And I think, like, your similar thing, like, you would love more than anything in the world that this would become, like, a super big podcast to be your full-time job. Same with me.
Yeah.
But I think one thing to recognize that's important that I try to remind myself is regardless of you do this podcast for 2 more years, you do it for 10 more years, and you become the next
Joe Rogan, the biggest in the game, or Charlemagne the God, who reposted my clip.
Yep.
I need to get him on here somehow.
I saw him right around here recently.
No way.
Yeah, like,
he's the one I need.
I think Andrew Schultz and him record like right down
their
on
studio.
Lafayette. Yeah.
Okay.
La Esquina?
Yeah.
I think it's next to La Esquina.
Okay, good to know. Because they used to record. Brilliant is my favorite podcast. They used to record out of these studios. He's the one I need to run into in person. I've run into Schultz. I've run into some other people I love. Charlemagne, I need to run into.
Yeah,
but okay.
Yeah. But I think it's important to remember, like, with this brand and with this podcast, there is so many things I have learned and like just cultivated skills that I never could have cultivated. And that's like, and I'm not even designing clothes is so fun and that's cool. Like outside of this brand, do I have ambitions to be like a clothing designer, like in terms of like for another brand, or like it would be probably this brand or my own brand or not. But I work in marketing, and like whether it's throwing events, I've thrown many release parties, something I've never done in another capacity, like making that go well, trying, talking to 1 million people. I'm on this podcast right now. Like I would never be on this podcast if it wasn't for the brand. And there's just, it makes you a more dynamic person, which will help you in life in so many different things, whether it's relationships, whether it's your career, whether you stick in finance or go into something else. Like this is the type of experience you cannot replicate in everyday life.
Yeah.
There's also pushing yourself in a way, like you're probably much more well-spoken. You can articulate yourself better, articulate the way, your goals, the way you think about the world, that matters in everything. Like whether it's your job, whether it's life. So
Yeah, that's the one that I was just gonna say where I completely agree. And there are so many skills that I've developed through doing this podcast. The biggest one being the way I articulate myself and the way I have conversations and being able to ask the right questions and kind of pull things out of people, which is talk to people every single day. You're at work, you're presenting. I did a presentation at work the other day in front of a lot of people, and I got back to the desk and was like, it's the podcast. I see the podcast coming out because it is a skill where I listen to every single episode. And there's always points where I'm like, I'm saying like they're too much. I'm saying they're too much. And then when I sit and record, I'm very conscious of the way that I come across and just trying to articulate myself in the right way. And it's similar, again, very similar journeys and very similar perspective.
Yeah.
I've loved doing this so much that I'm going to keep doing it for as long as I can find guests.
Yeah.
Ideally, it blows up one day and it is paying my bills. But even if it doesn't, it's bringing me so much joy. It is my own outlet, my own therapy session that I'm going to keep it going regardless of whatever happens.
Yeah. And you'll get like, even for me, like personally for me. So I think I'll probably like long-term stick in some sort of marketing. But like right now, like I'm in advertising and it's, very analytical, very research-based. Like I would love to do, branding and stuff like that. And there's, if it wasn't for this brand, I would have no experience in branding. I would have no experience in creative directing photo shoots. I would have no experience in working with manufacturers, with promoting myself, with making reels, with making all this stuff I've done for years that, I'm still cultivating skills, but in some ways I'm good at, in other ways, I could be better.
Yeah.
Like all of that experience is, something I wouldn't get outside of this.
Even the most random one, because I make the clips for this and sometimes used to edit the full length video. I have a friend who got engaged a couple months ago, and the engagement video, the person who created it didn't cut it in any type of way. So they needed to cut it down into something that was in a version that could be put out there. And I helped edit the video. I was like, why? What the fuck? Yeah, like I would have never thought. And again, I didn't do anything. It was literally the simplest of editing.
Yeah.
Added in some transitions, cutting stuff here and there. But I was like, honestly, if I never had the podcast, they wouldn't have thought to ask me. And now, boom.
And I think one also benefit of the brand and just like doing stuff like this in general is you want people to know about the brand and you want to push and get it to more people because you believe in it, which I very much do. And so that forces you to do things like, I'm like, I would have a good time on this podcast regardless, but like, this is my first podcast. Like I was a little nervous before this, but like, because the drive of wanting to get the word out, like forces you to do something like this, which will in the end lead to growth.
Yeah.
Or like doing pop-ups, I have to throw like, I'll make sure you're there. Like in February, March, I'm going to do a big, party where I'll show off all my new products.
I will be there no matter what.
And it's, that's a stressful thing. It's not necessarily like, you're the thing of the show. You got to explain the brand. You got to, really promote yourself. That's not always easy to do. But because of my like, I need to do this for something I care about, it's like stuff with the brand becomes like no question.
Yeah.
There's no second guessing because I know I have to do it. And that doesn't mean you don't get nervous, but you just have to do it anyways. And I think that's another example of really important skill in life. Like and again, I used to be pretty risk averse and pretty like hard at pushing myself. Like, I was lucky to have a pretty stable childhood and my parents like really created and I think one of the, there's a lot of positives to that. But I think one of the negatives is I was really not good at pushing myself and dealing with change early in adulthood and in college.
You could be complacent.
And like, letting fear get to you. And I think damaged goods, if it did anything, it has forced me because again, in my mind, there's no alternative. If it's good for something for the brand, like let's do it. It forces you to put yourself out there and like, and get, and kind of put yourself in front of people. So I know that's kind of contradictory what I said earlier because it's like, I don't know. It's kind of a combination. I've always been, it's weird. Stuff is not black and white. Like I've always been someone who is okay with attention, but at the same time, like, I guess, doing something different or heavy change at the same time, like there's a dichotomy where that was also difficult for me. I guess it's kind of hard to explain.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit to what initial reception was like to the brand.
Yeah, I mean, people are great. Also, the another thing I learned about, there's a lot of not great stuff going on in the world, and particularly right now. And there's a lot of bad people in the world. But, I think the brand also shows me how supportive people are. I have, the whole end goal is to get consistent purchases from, people that I'm not associated with. And I get those, but not at the rate, like that's the end goal of the brand. Like you want to be flooded with um purchases and orders from people that you have, no connection to. That's how you know you're starting to make it.
Yeah.
I am not at that point yet, so I still very much rely, even from a financial perspective, on people I know. And I think they do generally like the clothes, and I think the clothes are great. So I think they're smart for buying them. But I think the initial reception was a lot of support and a lot of people saying, this is great that you put yourself out there and did it. And I think it's just an example of as much as what's going on with the world is can bring you down, and like a lot of people can be mean or not supportive. Like there's a lot of support out there,
Yeah.
and I'm lucky to have that from the beginning, um, and even to this day, which is also helps me keep going.
And I've said this statement so many times, but I feel like our journeys and what we're both trying to do are so
Yeah.
aligned. Where I feel the exact same way. Where with the podcast, it is until there's people who are outside my immediate circle who are listening and tapping in weekly
Yeah.
and engaging with the content, then it doesn't really scale in a meaningful way. And the biggest challenge is getting it to that point. And it
Right.
sounds like it was exactly
Yeah.
what it is for you with the clothing brand. So then can you touch a little bit on just who your own inspirations are, whether it's brands, whether it's people, when it comes to style and fashion?
Yeah. I mean, I think, my like clothing journey is, middle school. So there's an area in Chicago called Wicker Park. That's where a lot of the streetwear stores are located. And I think that was my first awakening to just clothing and particularly streetwear designing. So shout out St. Alfred's, shout out RSVP, and round two in the stores over there. And when I was, seventh, eighth grade, pretty wide eyed, no drip. Going,
Which, first of all, in middle school, no one's supposed to dress
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
No one
Exactly.
before the age of like 16 should have any real fashion sense and dress well.
Yes.
This might be a hot take. Little kids, let them wear Spider-Man t-shirts
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Winnie the Pooh t-shirts. I don't think little kids should have pea coats. Like they shouldn't even come in that size. Like you shouldn't have good style as a child.
Yeah.
And that's like
I
my
would not
kid.
be dripping my kid out.
Me too. Like they're getting their whatever their favorite TV show cartoon is. That's what they're gonna wear. They don't need to have any real style until they get a
Right.
little older. But I digress.
But yeah, so yeah, I that area in and if anyone's familiar with Chicago, like they will know that was kind of like going into those stores, seeing different types of clothing, design-based clothing, where it's like kind of the I kind of view clothing in two lenses, where it's like, a jacket that, doesn't necessarily have a design, but its pattern, its fit, its cut is kind of its selling point. Or there's design-based clothing, which I think is what streetwear leans into, where it's like, there's definitely aspects of the clothing that make it desirable, but like it's the design that's the main selling point. And that's what I think like streetwear. So like I remember like Brain Dead, Stussy, Real Bad Man, kind of like at that time, medium to smaller streetwear brands. That's like, those graphic tees was what I used to wear. And that was kind of the beginning of what I was into. And then now, I think I've elevated a little bit. But I think also, it's nice to have friends who are into clothing too. So we're kind of always sharing different stuff. So like these pants are Cody Phillips, who's a designer who has been doing it for I think 10 years before he had any like really real success. I mean, he was successful, but not like on the scale he is now. He literally dropped these pants in like 4 colors, and just as like the right TikTok or reel can blow you up, the right ad can blow you up. And he just started running a lot of ads on these, and I mean they're fire.
Yeah,
Like,
those
I mean,
fu-
not to say so myself. I'm just saying like
those.
to hype him up, not hype myself. And he blew up, and now he has like a lot of followers, and I love those stories where it is the success is not immediate, which is normally the case.
Mhm.
um and so yeah, I kind of now if you look at my Instagram following, it's just hundreds and hundreds of brands I try to just follow, even if I don't like love their stuff.
Yeah.
if they are like successful, I want to like just know from a content perspective what people are going on.
Some inspiration, yeah.
But yeah, I think my personal style, and also in New York, has helped my personal style a lot. I think I always, I think I dressed decent. Like I'd say 2 to 3 years ago, I think it was better than people in Wisconsin. No offense to people in Wisconsin, love y'all, but dressed terribly. And so I think it was better in terms like I still was kind of like the one that was more into clothing than a lot of my friends. But like looking back, like I was not doing anything. But I think New York, I think pushes you because everyone dresses really well here. Like the New York fashion culture and just the people walking around the street, even in like Soho and in so many areas, like people just dress really well.
That is so true. Because even someone asked me the other day where I get my fashion sense from. Like my outfit now is okay. Thank you, appreciate it. But I'm also someone where like I like my style. I think I have good style, but that's just again the way that I look at my own clothing. And it's definitely developed significantly since I've gotten to New York. And someone asked me that the other day. They were like, "Oh, did your style change when you got to New York?" And I thought about it, and I was like, I guess it didn't consciously happen. It wasn't like, oh, I'm in New York City, now I need to dress a different type of way. But I think because of what you just mentioned, where everywhere you go, whether it's at night, during the day, walking around in Soho, West Village, everyone's got that shit on. And everyone is dripped out. And so it makes you subconsciously also elevate your own style. And I'm also someone like I'm not very creative style-wise. What I do is I see people who have something on and I'm like, that looks amazing. I want that. My biggest, literally seeing people on the street. And then there's 2 accounts that I follow that are 2 of my favorite accounts. One is Watching New York, I think is the name of it. And it's this guy who literally walks around New York and just takes takes pictures of people who have cool outfits on. I love that page because it's just the daily New York style. And I will see people wear things and I'm like, how did you even think of that? But that looks amazing. Now I'm going to try it. And then the other one is League Fits, which is phenomenal page.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is my style icon.
Which again, for people who don't know, League Fits, it just takes pictures of NBA players, mostly their tunnel outfits, like showing up to the game, but now it's also evolved into just their daily lifestyle photos. And NBA players, they can dress. And so those are probably those are where I look for my own fashion inspirations. But being in New York is definitely, I think, elevated my own fashion sense a little bit. And similarly, so I went to Princeton, and again, no disrespect to people at Princeton, they couldn't really dress either. I don't think so even, again, the bar was lower there, and my own opinion was probably slightly above it.
Yeah, that's the same.
And then you get to New York and the bar is hard, and the bar is high, and now it's like, okay, how do you meet up to that bar?
And it's kind of I think it's also like, it's like anything, it's like a skill. You decide like what you like. Like I didn't wear any jewelry until
me too. I didn't used to wear jewelry
a few years ago. My sister actually has, this is all my sister.
Okay.
Not the watch, but the bracelet. She has a side hustle jewelry brand called Metalhead Vintage, and it's all vintage, like curated.
Got to check that out.
Yeah, no, I actually like really, I don't even just rep it because my sister, I really like her stuff. But I didn't even really wear jewelry until like 2 years ago, and then that became part of my style.
Same. You got to accessorize. You just got to. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you just cultivate your taste and understand like what looks good on you. I think that's one funny thing with the brand. Like, I do think I make a lot of stuff that I like, which I think like the cut. Like I kind of sometimes go and I'm trying to like diversify it more, but I'm like sometimes I find myself leaning towards the cut and the measurements that look really good on me.
Which you should, because I was literally just listening to Jerry Lorenzo. He was on a podcast. He's the founder of Fear of God, who's now one of the most popular brands, does essentials. And he was saying the reason he even created the first t-shirt was that he couldn't find a t-shirt that was like a good cut, that was comfortable, that was stylish. So he went and created one for himself. He loved it. Again, catering to himself. And now he is one of the biggest brands in the world. So absolutely nothing wrong with creating something that you like.
And you gotta be resourceful. Like I always say this about my like process and how I make clothes. Like I'm not really an artist. Like I really like, in a way I am, but like I view myself as like someone with good ideas that just is willing to make it happen and good taste. But like, for example, so like I don't personally graphic design the designs. I come up with the ideas and then I put together creative briefs. So if you ask me right now to draw like an intricate, picture, it wouldn't look very good. But I know my limitations.
Yeah.
But so kind of my process for the designs and, the way I do the clothing is first I come up with kind of something I think a design that would look cool, like just in general, regardless of the brand or the context it's in. You know, whether it's the eyes in the back, I can't show you right now, but the eyes in the back of this jacket, or you know, the correct face. I look for, again, an inspiration that I just think is something that piques my interest, and then it's the process of trying to relate it to the theme of the brand. So Pinterest, shout out Pinterest. I probably spend 5 to 10 hours a week on Pinterest. Like that's kind of my whole process starts with Pinterest. I love Pinterest. I love their algorithm. Um, and you know, my feed just kind of refeeds me ideas. And I generally pull different references. So it's, you know, a reference can be anything from, like, I could send a picture of this water bottle and it's just trying to talk about how that H looks. Like that's like kind of how I pull references. Or it could be a picture of that leaf, but I'm not actually saying I want it to look anything like that leaf. I just want the color gradient to be the exact same as that leaf. So you kind of like, you describe the overall idea of the design, you and then you pull different references for each aspect of it. And then you also, like, I collab with people that I think are talented. And so I work with mostly like two girls that went to Wisconsin with me. Neither of them do it full time necessarily. They have other full-time jobs, but they're just really talented. And like, that's one thing I've learned with this brand. There's a lot of fucking talented people out there. My photographer in Chicago, he's gonna be famous. Like, some people like look at my photo shoots and like they give me all the credit. Like, I have the ideas for, like, you know, I definitely want to do, like, one of the things that I really try to do is really ambitious photo shoots that look really professional, that have a concept to them. And you know, even when it doesn't even make sense financially, but for me, it's kind of like a lot of it, the photo shoots that are like really out there and, you know, catch your eye. Like for me, that's almost what it's about over everything. So like, but one of my photographers, how did you see that on Instagram? I think he's maybe 21, 22 from Chicago. He's in college still. He's starting to get a little bit of recognition because he's he's so good. But, again, like, he's not a professional photographer. I think he's becoming one now because, again, like, if you're a professional photographer, it's if you do photography on a daily basis, it's fire, which is what he does. But again, it's like, I think it goes back to my point that people are fucking talented out there. And like, this is a random college kid that I DM'd. He shot one of my friends and I just DM'd him. I said, "Y'all like your stuff?" And like, I really think like he puts out photos and we're able together, not to, like, you know, I'm a big part of the creative process too. Like, we're able to put together photos that I think hold water with big brands. And like, so I got to High Snobiety. No offense to High Snobiety. Good magazine, good Instagram page. But they actually rented my apartment for a photo shoot once. And they had, I don't know, 20, 25 people come to the shoot. They had all this catered food. They were there for 10 hours. They paid us hella money for our apartment. And the end shots were great, but like the amount they spent on that photo shoot was just insanity. And for what I think, and again, I'm a little biased, I don't think they're better than the stuff that I can put out. And I think it's just collabing again, but it's collabing with talented people. But I don't think you need, 20, 10 designers. You don't need, all this fancy, processes and, 10 models. I guess I don't think it needs to be this grand operation if you have talented people that, are willing to, try to execute your vision.
Yeah, I think an important theme to encapsulate everything you just said is kind of knowing what your strengths are and knowing what you're not good at and leaning on people who are great in other aspects. Exact same thing for me where when I mentioned that I did this on campus, when I did the semester I did this on campus that I had a team of students working for me, literally the poster for this, the Go with the Flow little logo, there was a girl who was an illustrator for the school paper. I literally gave her one concept of what I wanted. I took a picture. I was like, this is kind of what I want it to look like. This is the first iteration.
Yeah.
No notes. Because that is what she does. And I need to figure out her name because literally no notes. I saw it and I was mind blown. I was like, you did this in 24 hours, no notes. You captured exactly what I wanted to.
Yeah.
And there's people who are so fucking good at what they do.
Yeah.
And I think initially I was like, oh, it's my podcast. I want to control every single aspect of it. But then you quickly realize, like, my forte, I think, is getting on the mic, having conversations with people and connecting with people. you need to figure out who can do the video production well, who can do the audio editing well, who can do the marketing well, which I need help with. So if you market, help me with this podcast and just empower people to run with what their strengths are.
Yeah.
And that sounds like exactly what you did with your brand. So
Yeah.
that's, you realize that
and sorry to cut you off. I think it also comes back to what we were talking about with the skills you cultivate through this thing. Like, think about what you're describing about what me and you do with this. It's literally project management. So we already hit on like articulating yourself, talking in front of people, and then we hit on project management. Think about business or life or anything you're going to get yourself into that matters. Like, those are two of the most important skills, and you're cultivating it through this process. So that's why like this experience is like
invaluable.
Yeah. Project management stuff. My whole, like, I'm someone who wants control over, again, like I struggle with that too, where I want to control everything. I want everything to look exactly through my vision. But in the end, like if you look at what I do, like I always describe my role with the brand, I do everything and nothing. Like I do, I edit all the videos, I come up with all the ideas, I creative direct all the shoots, I manufacture, like, but on the other side of the coin, I have photographers who take the photos. I have models. Actually, I've been my own model recently.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Model, but,
I'll be a model.
Yeah, you should. But I have models. I have graphic designers. I have, manufacturers who actually make the physical clothing. So you are relying on people on every single step of having the brand. And, you just have to get used to, you can't do everything, and like letting people, play their role.
Everything's a team effort. It's all a team.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to play their role. Okay, this conversation has been exactly what I thought it would, which has been great. Nice. Circling back to one thing that you mentioned earlier, which I think is an important aspect of it, the Damaged Goods Foundation and the mental health aspect, and donating a portion of every sale to this charity.
So it's $5 for every purchase. And basically what I came up with that is, again, if you're going to push the narrative that I'm pushing, like, I think in general in life, it is a little bit, as I said before, of like putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, if you're really trying to push that, like, we are all damaged goods, like you should, get the help you need. You should not be afraid of your flaws and try to work on them. Like, I do think it's important to be a part of that solution more than just like pushing the message, but I think that message is important too. But I also think like, $5 for every purchase, I think, the customer's down for that. I'm down for that. And it's a way to, just not just say you're going to do it, be about it.
You're like, practicing what you preach.
Practicing what you preach.
Which is important.
And, it's, again, this is it is, in a way, it's a side hustle. Sometimes it feels like my life because I love it so much, but it is a side hustle. And, you're adding clothes to the world, and it's great that people get to wear it, but like, what impact are you actually making? And I think the end idea is to scale it. Like, I don't sell it. Like, I donate, every 3 months based on how many I sold. I donate a good amount, but like, I don't think it's moving, the needle for this charity right now.
Which, I mean, I wouldn't look at it that way. I feel like whatever amount you've donated is making some sort of impact.
No, and of course, but my point is like, it's more like, this is what we're about. And if you want to support it, then you're supporting that too.
Yeah.
And if it does make it one day, then we will make, it will be a bigger impact. But yeah, I just think it's something that, this mental health stuff, it's our generation, struggles with it. I think more than the generation before. I think the generation below us is going to have a tough time. And
some of the statistics are scary.
And I think talking about things, I'm very big proponent of therapy. I go to therapy every week. And, I'm lucky enough to be able to like afford therapy. I have health insurance, but like not everyone can do that. So, I just like that this charity is, that's, I think, a number one thing. I think so many problems come from people either not having the resources or not, being able to talk about things. Cause that just, is a way to hash things out, make you feel better, not build it up. And I'm just hoping that some people out there who wouldn't be able to have therapy would be able to go to therapy because of the donations, because therapy helps me a lot.
Which is beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. And I think you should listen to the episode that I put out 2 episodes ago, because we spent like 35 minutes on therapy, mental health. Yeah. It was a friend from school who she was also very open with kind of her journey with mental health and spoke a lot about it. So I think you'd really enjoy that. That's me plugging my own episode to you on the podcast. But okay, this has been phenomenal. I think we are coming up on close to time, so I'm going to bring us to our music identity
Yep.
segment. So
Okay.
I have my guests come with 5 songs that describe who they are as a person.
Yep.
I leave it open for interpretation. So Cole, give me the song and give me the reason you chose it.
Okay. Okay. Let me pull it up here.
But yes,
Um,
it's not a memory test. Some people are like, "Can I
yeah,
pull
yeah,
out
yeah.
my phone?" I'm like, "Yes,
Okay.
please pull out your phone."
I got an interesting list here.
Okay.
But we're gonna start with Hustler Music by Lil Wayne
Okay.
off the Carter 2. So I think the reason I included this one is for me, Lil Wayne and that period of Lil Wayne was my first intro to hip hop and loving hip hop, which has been a lifelong love for me. I think Lil Wayne was the first artist. I listened to like Yeah by Usher and like stuff like that, but like real like, you know, what I would consider then like more grimy, like, you know, real hip hop. I think Hustler Music and Lil Wayne in that period and his ascension and kind of taking over the world during that period was, what got me into hip hop. And then I think to this day, it's still there. So,
And really quickly to interject, since it's so topical right now, which because one for me, that was J. Cole for me.
yep.
First concert I ever went to
J.
was
Cole's on here.
2014
We'll
Forest
get
Hill
there.
Drive, and so I loved it so much. But I have to ask you though, what your view is on the Kendrick song that he put out and Wayne's reaction to the Kendrick song.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was whacked out murals is the song. Yeah.
Yes. So I did listen to it. I didn't listen to it like as closely. I know there's controversy about it. The Kendrick thing's interesting. I've always loved Drake's music. I think I've always looked at it as, I get why Drake gets all the shit he gets. I think in a lot of ways he's deserves it. I can't personally turn my back on Drake fully because he's given me a lot of joy in my life with his music. But also Kendrick, Good Kid, Mad City is, that was a consideration for this list because Good Kid, Mad City is another stage in my music thing where it was the first concept album that I listened to through and like really felt emotionally affected by. And so for me, it's like, I can't really pick sides. And Lil Wayne, as I just explained, was my intro to rap. So, I got to stay out of it in terms of picking sides.
Fair enough, because I don't even know if you saw the tweet, because Lil Wayne tweeted something out
Yes,
about
I think I
like
saw it.
I'm just trying to stay out of this. Why is my name being brought up? But like respectfully, you were out there complaining and whining because you got overlooked for the Super Bowl, where it was never actually guaranteed to you. Kendrick is one of the
Yeah, I mean,
great.
Kendrick, they should do Kendrick for the Super Bowl. He's got the moment right now. I'm interested to see how Not Like Us goes in the Super Bowl. I don't think
Is gonna go crazy. Oh, he's gonna do it.
I don't know if they can say the pedophile line.
I think you can. I think he will.
So?
I think he will. I mean, it'll be
that is like the number one thing I'm looking for. Like,
and he's gonna have a month because he got nominated for a few Grammys for Not Like Us, so he's gonna win at least one Grammy for one weekend, and then perform at the Super Bowl the next. So
top of the world.
Drake needs to hide out for February. But sorry, continue.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we got Cocoa Butter Kisses by Chance the Rapper, and I think that goes back to my Chicago origin. Like, that 4-year period, 2012 2016, being in Chicago, being at a public school in Chicago, was a very special and formative time for me. And I don't think there's any better indication of that time than Chance the Rapper at that time. Like, he was big around the world, but he was massive in Chicago. And that album, particularly, and that song, kind of, had the city, in its hands.
Acid rap. Yep.
And I just identify again, as I said, with how Whitney Young and that part of my life was extremely, one of the most important, I think, decisions of my life going to Whitney Young. That period and coming up, musical awakening, Good Kid, Mad City, Chance the Rapper, culture awakening, fashion, like falling in love with culture and things that are what mainly interests me today is what was formed in that period in high school, which I think happens to a lot of people. But like,
I agree, and the only point I'll make on this is it has been disappointing the way Chance has fallen off, which I think he has. That's been disappointing because for me, Coloring Book is one of my favorite bodies of work ever, top to bottom, no skips.
To me, I will say he released a song recently. I forgot the name of it. We're about the Minnesota Community Fair or something that he was, and that was one of the first times I've heard. I thought Chance rap on that level. I thought Chance was gonna be Kanye West.
He was supposed the trajectory he was on. He was supposed to be the next.
He was able
big
to
thing.
change his voice, how interesting his music was, the topics he would touch on. Like, I really thought Chance was the next Kanye West in a way that, like, and I love Drake. Like, Drake could never be like, and like we don't have to like Kanye now is kind of a lost cause, but like Kanye in the old Kanye wasn't just incredible. He also touched on really complex topics in interesting ways. And I thought that's where Chance was headed. I don't know, fame and all of that. I don't know necessarily how that happened, But I'll always ride for Chance, man. That's a Chicago legend. No
Yeah,
matter
I
what
still
happens, he's
I
a
love
Chicago
I
legend.
love Chance. I listen to a lot of Chance
Yeah.
this morning. I listen to Sunday Candy most Sunday mornings. Yeah.
That's a great song. All right, number 3.
Yep.
We got Objects in the Mirror by Mac Miller.
Dude, I
So-
love your fucking list.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So I think I included this. First off, Mac Miller means a lot to me.
Me too.
I think, I've been lucky to, very lucky to not lose anyone really close to me. And so I haven't had to deal with death in like a really direct sense, which I'm very lucky for, and that isn't another level. But Mac Miller is the only person that's ever died that I can't really accept. To this day, I can't.
That and
accept it.
Kobe for me. Yeah.
Yes, I can't really accept that Mac Miller died because, and I think, Mac Miller for me is, I don't run from the fact like I had a privileged upbringing. I had a easy childhood in a lot of ways, and a lot of really, I think deep rap, talks on stuff that I can't relate to because I'm lucky. Like a lot of people grew up, poor with tough household situations. I didn't have that, and so I think why a lot of people, relate to Mac Miller is Mac Miller articulated the feeling of, and a lot of like connects to Damaged Goods, like the feeling of just, getting in your own way, feeling bad about yourself, like letting people down, anxiety, using substances to cope. Um, and and I think that is why, and also I just love his sound. I love his music. I love the way he sings his hooks. But I think that is why, there's a lot of people who feel that way that I feel about Mac Miller, that he has a cult kind of like, there's something different. And I think that if I could explain it, I think it's that he talks about just, not being able to get control of your mental health for reasons you can't explain.
Yeah, Mac Miller's exactly what you said. So for me, it's him and Kobe Bryant. I still think about Kobe Bryant. I'm like, there's no way he's gone.
Yeah.
But Mac Miller was one of the first rappers I listened to. He had a reality TV show, Mac Miller and the Most Dope Friends. That was, I think, one of the first reality TV shows that I watched. You felt like you knew the dude, like you were his friend. I've listened to him every step of the way. Swimming again, another one of my favorite
top 5
albums. That might be one of my top 5 albums ever. So again, I literally remember where I was when I found out that he died, and I was like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
So I relate to everything you just said.
It's like,
Completely
I
agree.
imagine like, losing someone close to you would be 10 times worse, obviously. But like I've never, like, it's one of those things when like you can't really, I think that's one way with grief, like your mind can't really, like, I can't really ever accept it. We are getting another Mac Miller album.
I just saw that, which I don't know how I feel about I can't pronounce that word. Posthumous albums.
By his family, and it was an album that he already like kind of created and planned to release. Like I think they're doing it more correctly. It's not like the Juice WRLD where it's like,
yeah.
But
okay.
Also, I'm just thirsty for more Mac Miller music.
Fair.
So,
All right, song number 4.
Okay, song number 4. I know this will be. This is so up your alley. So Love Yours by J. Cole.
Come on, man. This is my favorite list ever. This is my favorite list ever.
So, Love Yours, like, that's
self-explanatory, man. That's
song. It's something everyone can relate to. And it's just like, every single person, again, it goes back to we all have damaged goods, or we are all damaged goods. We all have things we want to change. There's all these other lives that we look at. What we talked about before about how, people, show them their best selves, and you think, you wish you were them. I bet, people look at me a certain way. People look at like other people I know, and, they only see the good parts, and they compare themselves, and, you'll never be happy till you love yours.
That's it, man. Comparison is the thief of joy. No such thing as a life that's better than yours.
I think about is there was, a certain thing I really wanted that specifically is the only thing I'm not gonna get into. But when I was right after, there was a certain thing that I needed to overcome and accomplish. And I remember, and I got obsessed with it. I've like, part of my mental health thing is a little OCD, so I can get obsessed with things. And I did it. I conquered this one demon I had. And I remember the next day feeling like, like I don't, like when that was all that bothered me, I thought that once I conquered that, I would be happy. And I remind myself this, I'm telling you right now, the number one thing, if I could choose anything in life, would be for Damaged Goods to blow up. And one thing I remind myself consciously is that I'm telling you tomorrow, if Damaged Goods blew up and I started selling out every drop, and I started, I was successful and I was in Fashion Week, that would be great and I would be happy about it. but I would still wake up tired. I would still have trouble sleeping sometimes. I would still be unhappy sometimes. I would still want other things. And that's what that song is about. And, I think, I mean, again, that's a song that, a lot of people just relate to it and get a lot from. So,
Yeah, that's my single favorite J. Cole song, and I'm
Yeah.
the biggest J. Cole fan. He's doing a whole audio series right now, which
Yeah, I heard
I'm
about
gonna
that.
put out a whole episode with my boy Nate, just specifically on J. Cole and the audio series. Like that's my
Nice.
goat. But
I'll definitely listen to that.
it's a song that again, it's a mainstream song. Like people say they're like it's so basic. I'm like I don't give a fuck. It is a beautiful song. That is my favorite J. Cole song.
Yeah.
All right, bring it home. Number 5.
And my number 5, so I wanted to take it away from hip hop because in the last 3 to 4 years, my newfound love is kind of indie pop and like girl pop.
Okay.
So I listen to a lot of artists that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So my favorite artist in the whole world right now is Billie Eilish.
Okay. I would not have guessed.
Love Billie Eilish. I just saw her at MSG. And so everything I wanted is a Billie Eilish song. It talks about like getting everything you want and then still feeling like you're underwater. So it's similar to other themes even in the Love Yours. But I included that because I didn't want to include only hip hop because I think in the last 3 years I've really found a love for indie pop and just pop music in general and kind of R&B and I think Billie Eilish and that song particularly which came out in COVID kind of like started that process and I love that shit.
That might have been one of my favorite, and I usually don't give my opinion on lists. That might have been my single favorite
Let's go.
5 that I've gotten so far, because there was so much in there that I relate to.
Yeah.
And okay, to bring it all home, the
Yeah.
final segment, I have my guest manifest life 10 years in the future to the
Okay.
most specific detail possible. So Cole, in 10 years, where do you want to be?
Okay. 10 years. I think if I could ask for one thing, it would be to find some form of contentment. Like I just want to be, when I wake up in the morning, like, be able to take a deep breath, feel like I'm doing enough, feel like I'm, and that's just kind of the overarching, feeling that I want more than anything. And I think, I think contentment in today's world, especially when you're motivated and driven, is very very hard. It's again the love yours situation of like something's always more, but again like not to be cheesy, but like loving yours. Like I want to be someone who like is content and happy with myself and nice to myself, and that I'm doing enough. So that's like regardless of what I'm doing, that's what I want, and I think that's very very hard to get in your 20s specifically. It's almost impossible, I think, in your 20s because you're not your 20s are for not having that. That's the whole almost point. And that's why 20s are hard. And then, I'm going to manifest it. I want Damaged Goods to be a legitimate streetwear brand. I think I want to be, I would want my own store that has damage aspects to the actual layout of the store. I'd envision it either be in probably Lower East Side or on Milwaukee Street in Chicago. One of those two places.
Or
my own
both.
streetwear store or both. Fuck it. And I just want to be, a brand that, is widely known and respected in the streetwear space. And I get to create and, manifest these ideas on a daily basis. But if that doesn't happen, I want a career that, makes me feel the way Damaged Goods feels. Where I love my job currently. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great job. I love my coworkers. If you're watching this, shout out you guys.
Say it to him.
But I think long term, I would like to do something, that is, gets me out of bed like Damaged Goods does. Like where what I said, I think the number one way, like something to chase and why I can never stop doing Damaged Goods is what I described in the beginning or earlier in the podcast about how when you asked me to go on this podcast, it's next question is not even a thought because it's something that could help the brand or it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And because I care about the brand so much and I'm so passionate about it, that's why it's a no-brainer. And I think whatever I do, whether it's the brand, which would be the main goal, or some other career that I hope is in some sort of creative marketing, I wanted to make me do that feeling where it's like doing what needs to be done is not even a second thought because you're passionate about it.
Hey, man. Cole Rodby, everybody.
Hey,
This was this is also why I do this. This has
Yeah.
energized me so much, got me so excited. I
Yep.
think it's been a great conversation. The fact that I literally met you a week and a half ago because I crashed your birthday party. Now we've had this amazing conversation
Love it, bro.
that will live in perpetuity forever and ever and
Yeah.
ever. And similar, like you said, if this never goes anywhere, I'm okay with that because we've had this moment here
Yeah.
that we can always refer back to. And there's
great
no,
experience.
it's always just everything's valuable. You get something out of everything. So, any final words for the people?
Thank you for listening. Damage Goods Clothing __ on Instagram.
Oh yes, say yes. Put all the yes. Say all the things.
Yeah. So, I'm not even gonna push my personals. Crod CROD 1119, but don't worry about that. Damage Goods Clothing _. We have events in New York with free drinks. So if you follow, you'll get the info on that. We got some sweatpants, some long sleeve tees, and some hoodies dropping in the Q1 of 2025. So check it out.
There you go. That's it. This has been another episode of Go with the Flow. Thank you for listening.